Hello, everyone. This is Leslie Christin, and this is one of my most favorite ladies. And her name is Christine Volden. She is fantastic. Some of you may have seen her on my Beauty Dharma Summit, and she is in Oakland, California, and she is the CEO of Soulful Selling. So, welcome, Christine. I'm
Thank you
thrilled to
so
have you
much.
here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And today's topic, we are going to talk about how your impact affects your sales and this virtual and visual world. And we were having a little bit of a conversation because everyone, just like us, how we're on Zoom, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, everywhere. And even though you might not be in sales, we are still selling all the time.
Yep, all the time. Yeah, I always say really anyone who's trying to get their idea across is selling, right? You're selling yourself, your ideas, your beliefs to everyone around you all the time. If you interact with people, you're selling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Christine, I want to do a formal introduction so everyone knows about you and they know what a rock star you are.
Oh, thank you.
So, Christine is the owner and founder of Soulful Selling. And so, if you don't know about her, you definitely need to follow her on Facebook and LinkedIn and all the other social
Instagram.
media. Yes,
Yeah.
Instagram and social media platforms, because she has such a very unique approach and she's just the coolest. So you want to do that. She supports companies and individuals to embrace their unique strengths, to sell themselves, their products, and their services. She's worked in sales for over 15 years in Silicon Valley with some of the largest companies and influencers and has helped generate over $100 million plus in sales in the process. So that's quite remarkable.
That's a long history of working in sales.
Yes, it is. And with, some big tech companies because you're in the Bay
Yeah.
Area. So
Mhm.
you've been kind of like at that ground level, which is so cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
many of us did not start with all of this. So you
No.
have that advantage to help us. You also, it says here that you help small businesses and intuitive entrepreneurs to build powerful businesses, sales plans, and help generate more revenue and confidence using the quiet selling method.
Yes.
So, do you want to share a little bit about what the quiet selling method is?
Absolutely. I think I have so many people who come to me and say, like, I hate selling, right? And the first question I ask them is, why do you say that? Like, what do you believe that makes you say that? Because
Mhm.
typically they say that because they think sales has to look a certain way. They've seen it portrayed in a way that feels very uncomfortable or kind of pushy or even sleazy to them. And they're like, I can't possibly do that. But I usually point out, well, I'll bet there's something that you've purchased that you absolutely value and was worth every penny, and you tell all your friends about. And they're like, oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And so I think what happens is, number one, we have this perception of selling, right? That isn't always accurate. Just as humans, we tend to remember the negative experiences a little bit more than the positive. And that's just part of, I think, our human biology, right? That like we were designed to, avoid poisonous berries on the bush instead of, looking at that amazing meal we made last week, right? So
Mhm.
that's part of it. But also, I do find that a lot of people are skipping this fundamental step in selling. When you see someone online and it feels really sleazy, or if you get messages, and I get these all the time on like LinkedIn or my Instagram feed, where someone's just selling you that you've never met before, I'm like, well, that's why people believe that, right? Because they're skipping this step. I believe that sales starts with connection, right? You are selling to another human. I don't care what you're selling, if it's a product or service, whatever it is, you're still selling it to another human being. So if you're, sending them a cold email and they know nothing about you, you're just skipping a step, right? You have to get to know that person before you make them that offer. And that's why, people think like, oh, selling is so gross and it's so sleazy. Well, that's because you're watching a lot of people who are doing it and like skipping this fundamental, and I would say the most important step, which is connection. And that's what quiet selling is about. It's not about being quiet. And I think sometimes people perceive it. It's like, well, how can I be quiet? When you're quiet, you have to listen, right? And you're listening not just to your potential clients, but also to yourself, your intuition, your subconscious, like your gut feelings about things. But a lot of that quiet part of the quiet selling is focusing on connection, right? You have to sometimes wait when you're trying to make a connection with someone, and you have to wait for them to respond. You don't need to. I see this happen a lot right now on LinkedIn, and somehow I don't know how people have my email, but I'll get 3-4 emails from someone where they'll say, hey, here's this product I'm selling. Like, are you interested? And then if I don't respond 2 days later, another emails, hey, I didn't get a response from you. And I'm like, but I have no idea who you are. And I'm still not even clear on what you're selling. So that's just an example. So that's kind of an overview of the quiet selling. It's about connecting first and then selling later.
I love that. Wow. And of course, my mind's like, beep, 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 because that's exactly what happens. And it's almost a very male approach to sales. Like men have no attachment to having those 500 follow-up phone calls, where women are just like on the third one, they're already just, oh gosh.
Yes. Well, I would say, and I don't think it's because I see a lot of women do, I do think it's a masculine style, and that doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just kind of a push. You know, that's how I would interpret masculine and feminine. And masculine energy is just like pushing, pushing, pushing. You know, more feminine energy is allowing, right? But there are tons of women in sales who have a very masculine approach, right? And so this is definitely a more feminine approach where you're waiting, right? It's like there are sometimes you meet someone and you just cannot make a connection with them for whatever reason, right? There's something about them and you that just doesn't click. And, you know, a masculine approach would be, well, let me figure it out. Let me like figure out what it is that's not clicking and fix it, right? And a more feminine approach would be like, okay, well, that's just not a good fit. I'm going to move on or just wait and see what happens.
Yes. Or I think, you know, and that's a whole other conversation as well.
Sure. Yeah.
But it is such a, just because being in the cosmetics industry, you know, Instagram is the world of touchy-feely, pretty images, where LinkedIn is very much about a very business approach. And so they are two different conversations completely.
Yes, for sure.
And one of the things that I did want to share for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Leslie Christin, and I'm the owner and founder of CARA Cosmetics. And I'm also a lifetime film and television makeup artist. So where that brings me into this conversation is that one of the things that I do is I specialize in helping people elevate, especially professionals, elevate their brand and really connect their image. What I say is that you are the protagonist of your brand. And from having worked in film and TV, you know, each character is created. And now that we're in this visual world of film and television, turning on Zoom or whatever, our DIY world, it's very much about that. And it's about the aesthetics of how quickly you can, in that silent selling way, how quickly can you engage with that client and or that potential client, and then also connect with them. Because I feel that we were talking about how a lot of times things don't align with perhaps what you may be selling, or what you're talking about doesn't align with maybe your background or how you look, or even your camera angles, how you're presenting yourself. And then I know, Christine, you were sharing a little bit about some of the things that people could do that can help them sell, or that can help them be clearer as well.
Right. Yeah. And I love that you brought up this kind of like film and television, because I think there's so much you could learn as someone who's an entrepreneur or someone who works in sales, or even someone who's just trying to get their ideas across from film and television, right? Like when you really connect with a character, right? Like, so I think that's a whole interesting thing to think about. But in terms of, appearance, there is this concept of like, you only get one chance to make a first impression, right? And I think that applies to every part of your life, not just selling, but business. But I think that it's more than just your appearance, right? They say, there's all these studies that say someone like decides what they think about you within the first like 5 seconds or 3 seconds. And so it's not just the way you look, like your energy and your confidence and the way you carry yourself affects your appearance, right? So a lot of that, what I coach people on, is to make sure they're super clear on their offer or who they are and what they're providing. And that is, first of all, going to provide a ton of confidence for someone. So when someone asks like, well, what do you do? Or what's your idea? Being able to speak clearly and confidently is like just as important and is only going to enhance your appearance, right? So when you have the combination, I think of those two things, that confidence and, having enough like an appearance where you are showing that you care, right? You care about yourself enough to present yourself in a certain way. I know, like I work with a lot of female coaches, and some of them are like, think, oh, well, their appearance shouldn't be important, right? Like shouldn't be, right? Well, I mean, yes, but I think that the way you carry yourself and dress yourself and put makeup on or whatever, your process is, it says a lot about how you feel about yourself. So if you feel like you deserve that and you want to show up that way, that's great. If you're doing it as a statement and not coloring your hair or doing whatever, then, it's very important that you show up confidently. But I think those are really the keys, is just to have that confidence. And to me, a lot of that is being super, super clear. And then really pairing that with your appearance and saying, hey, I care about myself and the way that I look in front of you. And that's important.
I agree. And that, that's a very interesting conversation about, especially as women and in Hollywood, women can't age the same way as men can. I mean, there is that. We are, as human being, judging machines. Whether we are the most spiritual, we still judge whether that flower is beautiful, or I love this garden or this furniture, or and like you were saying before, sometimes we connect with people and sometimes we don't connect with people. But if you show, like you're saying, that you do care, and especially if you're going for a higher end client, you can't, I would say, kind of like, hinder your business because of your beliefs. It is what it is in this world right now.
Yeah.
We are all playing the game.
That is such a good point, right? It's not really about like you and what you believe, right? Like, and that's kind of the fundamental, I would say, basis of sales that sometimes people miss. It's not about what you're selling. It's about how what you sell helps your potential client, right? So it's not about you. And that's why like that quiet part of quiet selling is so important, that you listen, because you can have a great product, but if it doesn't apply, and if you can't tell the person that you want to buy it how it helps them, how it makes their life easier, what problem it solves, it doesn't matter. It like has to be relevant. And that's, going back to these emails that I'm getting, they are cold emails that where they don't really look at my website or have any, insight, but that's always what's missing from every single one. Is I'm like, well, how does this help me? You tell me you do all this automated stuff. I even got like a janitorial bid the other day, and I'm not like a one person. Well, I'm a company that's small enough that that's not something that's relevant. But I thought like, well, tell me how this applies to me. And occasionally I do write them back and I'm like, explain to me how this helps me. Cause I'm like trying to help coach them as salespeople. But yeah, I mean, it's about, someone else's perception and how you help them. It's not really, about you and what you think.
I love that. And again, because the competition is so stiff now, and our attention span from being Zoom fatigued is
Mm-hmm.
even less, then you have our chances of that window is becoming smaller and smaller to be able to either capture someone's attention or for them to even be able to hear us, especially if there's so much noise going on, in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of, when I say noise, like the crap in the background
Oh
or
yeah.
our hair or the,
Mm-hmm.
shirts kind of disheveled, whatever it might
Mm-hmm.
be. All of these different things are just, it's all noise, and so I can't hear your message because I'm too busy trying to figure out what's going on back there.
Yeah, or
And
yeah, and the other, 1,000 competing things that person has in their brain, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So share with the audience some things that they could do quickly to, help with their sales.
Well, I think the first is really having that really, really clear offer and how it benefits someone else. I always ask people, like, well, what's the before and after? Like, what's the after of working with you, right? If I work with you, CARA, and I take one of your courses that tells me how to, present myself professionally, like what happens after? Like, who am I? What's different?
Hmm.
How do I feel? Right? Like, that's what you really need to be clear on. Because people, I always say there's this stuff, right? You're like, well, it's a course and there's 6 hours of content and this is what it talks about. There, that's your stuff, right? And you
Yeah.
watch it on Zoom or it's like on demand, but that's not really what they're buying. They're buying like what that transformation is or what that after is, right? And I think for you, it'd be like, well, you're going to feel like empowered. You're going to know how to present yourself. You're going to feel really confident in this specific area because this is what I'm a specialist in. And then, that's going to like pay off in so many areas, right? You're going to
Right.
look more professionally. You're going to feel more confident. You're going to be able to, and maybe that, the effect of that is you make more money, you get a promotion, you do that. And then there's the benefits of that. Right. So I think that's where a lot of, in big companies or even small companies, they kind of get that down. But I find that a lot of times for entrepreneurs, that's missing,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're like in coaching or spirituality. That's kind of the area that I work in. I notice people are always selling like this stuff, like, hey, well, I have a coaching program for you. And I'm like, that's not what you're selling. You're
Yeah.
selling, that confidence and that empowerment in them. Like, I have a program called the Quiet Selling Method. And what I'm selling is the confidence that you understand and can sell yourself. Right. And that is the biggest takeaway. I don't ask people, hey, did you make more money after this class? Because a lot of times that is not measurable. But I do ask them, well, what's the main result after this class? And they say, I feel like I can do it. I feel more confident and I understand it now. And that has helped me. And on top of that, they have like clarified their message and done these other things. But the big thing I'm selling is this confidence in your ability to sell.
That's so
So, yeah.
true, because we're so used to explaining everything that goes into the course
Mm-hmm.
versus, okay, this is exactly the results and the gold that you're getting from paying X amount of money or putting in X amount of time into
Right.
that. Yes,
Right.
I love that. So how can people find you?
So yeah, they can go to soulfulselling.com. But I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. So any of those, if you search Soulful Selling, you will find me. And I have tons of free guides. I actually have a new free guide and it's just actually going to go up on my website today, but it's a guide to connecting with people. So I call it like a guide to soulful connection. And it's all with that idea of, hey, connect first, sell later. Because sometimes people don't know exactly how to connect. With some people, it's really easy, right? You meet someone and you just click. Like when we met, Leslie, like I was like, oh, you're so awesome. I love talking to you, but it's not always that easy.
Yeah.
And this really breaks it down into like what does happen when you click with someone and how do you make that happen when it doesn't happen immediately. And this is kind of a guide that I've drawn, and it has to do with a lot of things in building trust, but sometimes people aren't quite sure how to do that. So I kind of give them a step-by-step breakdown. So yeah, I would encourage people to go to my website because you can find out more information about that. It's right on the top of the page.
That's fantastic. And who are some of your, I guess, your target client and your Or I mean, I
Yeah.
know you work with all kinds of people, but it's
Yeah. No, that's a great
specialized
question.
a lot lately.
Yeah. So I work a lot with people in coaching and healing. So a lot of my clients either are doing a very specific type of coaching, whether they are like in a specific modality. So I work with people who do things like astrology. I work with people who, help people do like physical techniques. A lot of them are very spiritual practitioners. So they might be coaches or even like professional psychics or healers of some modality. But that tends to be who I work really well with, because I am a big, that I would say the deepest part of quiet selling is really understanding and listening to your intuition, right? If you're a more businessy person and you don't like that word, I would say it's tapping into your subconscious, because there is a ton of science behind the power of your subconscious. And I would consider those things the same. So I work really well with those people, because I think that is the key to kind of really growing your business to the next level. It's the difference between kind of having a business that's like just getting by and really making this your kind of like life's purpose and building into a really big business. The way you need to do that is to listen to your intuition and let that guide you. Going back to the masculine and feminine, like trusting enough that that information is true, rather than listening to all of these different people who are telling you what to do, kind of listening to your own internal guidance. Because I really think most people know almost everything they need to know. You don't need to take another business class. You don't even need to take my selling class if you get that down. That is like the most important thing, is really being able to develop that discernment and intuition.
I love that. And I want to just say that is one of the things that I think the number, I just did a focus group with quite a few clients of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest challenge that people have is that if they're going to get, if they're going to get their makeup done, or they're going to get a look, they're afraid that they're not going to look like themselves, or it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
something that's just going to be so overwhelming, or, because I think all of us have gone to the department store, well, when you could go, and you you had this makeover from
Mm-hmm.
someone that didn't, had maybe like a couple, a little bit of training, and you end up going, oh my gosh, this is just so not me, and not
Right.
feeling like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one of the key things to really personalizing your brand and understanding, because it's bringing that intuition, that essence. I do
Right.
this whole thing called branding with archetypes with my clients. So
Oh, I love that.
it's so cool, because you really understand the core of who you are, instead of watching another YouTube video of somebody
Mm-hmm.
showing you highlight and contour techniques that looks nothing like you. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
very much about that, like, okay, oh yeah, I'm going to learn something from this person and from that person. But our facial features and who we are is very unique and special.
Right.
And I love exactly what you said, because it is really honing into that. And I think that, most people that teach selling or business we don't come from that place. And and where you
Right.
were saying that, it's so much aligned to that. And I think maybe it
Right.
just takes years. I don't know, being in my 50s, it's taken a long
Yeah.
time
Well,
to.
I think it's a lot. Like you're pointing out such a great fact. There's so much to be said for knowing yourself.
Mhm.
Right. And I do find that, the older you get, the more you pay attention to those things. But I think most of the time when like people aren't bringing their personality, right? A lot of sales training is like very robotic. Like this is what you say, this is what you do, whatever. And people don't even try to bring in their own personality. Don't try to say like, okay, would I change this slightly? Or even just like the way they're thinking about it. They don't bring in their own, knowledge or intuition or gut feelings into it, because
Yeah.
they are listening so much to someone else, they're discounting their own inner voice. So yeah, I mean, I think with age and maturity that we learn that, but I would love for more people to learn that sooner and know like, hey, if you have a gut feeling, I remember even being a kid and thinking things like, this doesn't seem right to me.
Mhm.
And I didn't feel confident enough to listen to that voice, but now I am. So my goal is really like, I would love for everyone to listen to that voice as soon as they start hearing it and trusting that.
I love that. And I will follow with that you cannot be beautiful until you have self-love.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
just, and once you can take that, because I think that a lot of times we're very especially now it's become very narcissistic with selfies and all this other kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
And that's really not what it's about
Yeah.
at all. That whole exterior, yes, do we kind of need to adorn that a little bit and whatnot, but it's really about capturing and understanding, that own self beauty in there, and then that starts to unfold, just like that intuition. The same
Right.
thing. It's that voice that when we look back at
Yep.
photos 20 years ago and we were like, wow, what was I complaining about? I looked amazing.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Uh-huh. So it's just it is a whole process, and it's really about, I love this soulful selling. It is just such a beautiful and refreshing way of looking at, because we're selling, whether we're selling or not, we're selling ourselves every day, or getting that
Yeah.
new job, or transitioning, whatever it might be. So please go to soulfulselling.com. Christine, you are just magical and so full of knowledge.
Oh,
And
thank you.
thank you. And she has a whole bunch of videos and information. And I so appreciate that. All of you that are interested in working with me, you can go to caracosmetics.com, and we have our camera ready set program, and we also have our brand you beautifully program. So there's a whole bunch of things that can really help elevate and make us a little more noticed, I would say, as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think it's such a confidence builder too, to be able to present yourself in a certain way and be knowledgeable
yeah,
about kind of, yeah, the art of you know, making yourself look as best as the best that you can, right?
yes, and being able to speak concisely and have a clear message in your offer. That
Hmm.
is, and coming from a standpoint, before you ask someone to marry you, please date them.
Exactly.
So let's get connected, and I want to thank you so much. We will definitely have to continue this conversation. And you,
Absolutely.
yes, and thank you, and to all of you out there, just so much success and stay safe. And we so appreciate you watching. So have a beautiful, beautiful week. Thank you,
Awesome.
Christine.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.